Aloha, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Civil Beat's New Ideas Live weekly show, interviewing different thought leaders around the islands. And we are so happy to begin today with two, as one of the comments in our Facebook page noted, rock stars of the farming world in Hawaii, Nancy Redfeather in Kona and Ken Love also in Kona. So thank you both for being here. And particularly to Ken, who woke up this morning not feeling so well, but who has valiantly joined us and is with us. Thanks, Ken.
Mute me if I start snoring, you know.
So I wanted to begin by asking you to, each of you, to introduce yourselves to our viewers. Just maybe tell us for a minute or two about your background in farming in Hawaii so that people have a sense of the work that you have been doing and the particular specific interest that you have in the world of farming.
Good, Nancy.
Do you want to start, Nancy?
Yeah, sure. Aloha, everyone, and thanks so much, Julia, for inviting us to come on. This is really an interesting format. So I moved to Hawaii in 1978, and I had always wanted to have a small farm, but it was always very difficult to find the right piece of land. So while I was looking, which took 20 years, I was a home gardener. And I lived all over Kona, and I had home gardens everywhere from the ocean all the way up to the 2,000-foot level. So I got a lot of experience in different microclimates. And then in 1998, Jerry and I bought this 1.2 acre piece in Hanalo at Kapanui, just right by Kainaliu in Maukakona. And we started developing this piece into a small family farm. So we wanted to have both vegetable gardens and also an orchard, production areas. And we just started building it from nothing. There was actually nothing here when we started. So we got to put in all the trees, which are now 22 years old and bearing. And so at the beginning, starting maybe in the early 2000s, we had a CSA here and we grew vegetables and we did boxes for people. And we did that and community classes for people until 2006, when I was hired by the Kohala Center to be the coordinator of the Hawaii Island Food Summit. And from there, they invited me to be the director of the Hawaii School Garden Network. And from there, I started working with all the schools on Hawaii Island and helping them to create gardens and programs. And one thing led to another, you know, developing the statewide farm to school hui. And then along the way, also developing the Hawaii Public Seed Initiative that has led to the Hawaii Seed Growers Network and our online marketplace right now for locally grown seeds. So I've been busy, and this has been a really wonderful way to introduce myself into all types of agriculture. That is what I've always wanted. And so now I'm older and I'm enjoying my retirement, but I'm not really retired because I'm still doing a lot of things.
Okay. And just before we turn to Ken, can you, so we have a picture in our minds of your farm. Can you tell us a little bit about those trees that you planted 22 years ago? What's growing outside the window?
Well, so the property is pretty much divided into half. And so a little over a half an acre is fruit, nut, and spice trees. So, you know, we've got macadamia nuts and all the citruses, lots of different tropical fruits, and cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, lots of jaboticabas, persimmon. Oh, we have all kinds of things. Abiu, figs, papayas, of course, pineapples.
Grapes.
Oh, grapes. We have lots and lots of grapes. And, you know, and still, even on a half an acre of land, you can have so much. We have 5 different avocado trees, and they're big. So it's amazing what you can do on a really, really small piece of land over time.
Okay. All right. Well, that is a perfect segue into Ken Love, who has been the tireless executive director of the Hawaii Tropical Fruit Growers Association, and who has helped many people in the islands have such a great variety of trees on their land, thanks to a lot of the work that Ken has done. So Ken, take it away.
I don't know. I just agree with Nancy, and then we can move on. I started. I did 9 farms here. I've built, and the one I'm now number 8 is the last one. And the first one, way out in far south Kona, had a couple hundred species of fruit trees, but it was focused on coffee and macadamia nuts and the usual mono duo cropping that they do here. And it wasn't long after that, which was 1983, I think, that I realized that I made more money from 5 pigs than I did with 5 figs than I did with, 5 pounds of coffee. So we started doing a lot of the, what do you call it, the production analysis and cost of production. And that's something that people here really need to learn and get on UH case about, having to learn cost of production, because you can't be sustainable and a successful farmer without it. We have 2 acres and a little over 2 1/4. When we bought it, we owned a remnant, and I called the county and they said, "Oh, we don't take remnants anymore. Sorry." I said, "I think you'll want this one." No, I just want to give it to you guys. "No, we don't take remnants." I said, "Okay, I'm putting a gate across the highway and nobody's going south without they paid." So I own to the middle of the highway here. So needless to say, they finally took the remnant. But these are the things that we run into all the time as farmers, that people just say no, they don't want to do anything. So I'm going through it with one of our guys on Maui now, trying to get clearance to do some value-added processing. And they're just, his boss in Honolulu said you can do it. Why is he saying you can't? That kind of thing. So it takes a while to work through some of the roadblocks that we come up with, whether it's in terms of getting trees in, or getting things sent over from the mainland, which we can't, sending things to the mainland, which we can't. There's all kinds of tips and tricks and ways to go about it, but most of them have to follow USDA and HTOA guidelines. So learning those helps a lot, and they're all online. So it makes a big difference.
So I wanted to reference both of the essays that you were kind enough to write for the essays section. So I think, Ken, that's a good way into your essay, which I really felt that this was the essay that appeared on Civil Beats Idea section November 30th, about learning what Hawaii can learn from Japan around farming and food. And it seemed that your piece was really focused on the systems, on how the systems could be better.
Yeah.
And
so yeah, I get it. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I think you just intuited what I was going to ask, which is
yeah. I mean, we for me, it's goes back to the cost of production, and how is one way we solve that? I need binoculars to see if there's still lychee up there. Keep your trees short. It's a risk management tool. Once you learn how to properly prune your trees, you can get almost the same amount of fruit over a 10-foot tree than you can from a 50-foot tree, because there's no way to get up there. And I learned that from backing into the tree, putting an extension ladder and going up with a telescoping picker, and I still couldn't reach the mangoes at the top. Mm-hmm. This is nuts. Why am I doing this? We should follow the Japanese pruning systems or follow the Australian pruning systems. It doesn't matter which you prefer, the Tatura trellis or the Japanese pruning. So on Maui, we have them next to each other. And as they expand, we'll do more about them. But you reach out and harvest instead of having to. I'm the only one you'll hear complain about having to bend over to harvest avocados. My avocados tend to crawl along the ground. And people come here to see that. every week, every Saturday, and they can't believe it. Oh, they told me at UH not to top it. Why? You have to top it. Otherwise, it's going to be 80 feet on a Yamagata. Just top it. Keep it low. Keep it manageable.
What percentage of trees in the islands these days do you think are being pruned correctly?
There's if we use the USDA statistics and some that a grad student Jyotsna wrote about, there's we have we grow and sell 4 million pounds of avocados, and we waste 6 to 7 million pounds. And so look at that percentage between 4,000 and 60,000, and that's what's being pruned and what's not. If people are selling 4 million pounds like they do with Charwell, Bayshore, Malama, Kahalu, the common Yamagata, the other varieties, that's a different story. So once they get that in place and they start keeping those trees lower, it's amazing. I grow them in 55 to 100 gallon pots.
For the people who are watching, if they're growing and selling 4 million pounds, and then I think you said that 6 to 7 million pounds are being wasted.
Yeah.
What percent?
We grow and sell 1 million pounds and import 4 million pounds. Sorry.
Okay, wait, can you say that again?
So we grow and sell 1 million pounds, we import 4 million, and we waste about 7 million.
Okay, okay. Well, one of the ideas that came out, I think you said in your essay that you felt was maybe for you the most exciting idea is the idea of the fruit parks. And I wonder if you could talk about those a little bit, because I think one of the pieces that seemed like it could potentially be so valuable and powerful for people here is that that they have libraries, that they have kitchens that are training kitchens, that these are places where people can really, they're like schools in a way.
Yeah, they really are. And it's a place to see what you're about to spend $25 to $150 on for a tree to put in your yard. This is what you're supposed to do with it. And so at the fruit park, it's easy enough to explain. And there's people who work there, at least in Japan's case, for explaining all of that. How much water, what kind of fertilizer. It doesn't matter if it's a citrus or avocado or mango. They know what to do. I mean, this is been their job until they retired and went to work at the fruit park.
Mm-hmm.
Farmers are all a glutton for punishment. I need a vacation from retirement. You know, it's like we've got to focus on all of this stuff and on the education, which Nancy is so good at starting the kids. What surprises me, some of the parents bring their kids over on Saturday. Oh, I know what that's Balimbi. Huh? How'd you know what that is? Oh, I learned about it in school. Really? You want some to take home? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's a great thing for them to, you know, pass on. And, you know, my wife was a special ed teacher for 12 years, and she did the same thing with all the kids at Conahuina, and they all remember. And when I used to go at the library with the kids, I put like 10, 15 fruits in a big burlap bag, and, you know, including a monster jackfruit and then little tiny lychee and jabote kava. And I'd have each of the kids reach in and pick one out. And usually there's always that one kid who just couldn't move that jackfruit. Come on, you can do it. And he'd get it out, and we'd have to explain to each one of them what the fruit was and what they can do with it. So it's just education like that, whether it's on that level or whether we have, I mean, you mentioned the grocery stores there at the beginning. I mean, we and it's all got to be tied together. We need people who are proactive advocates for us, you know, from the Department of Ag, not from a particular commodity group like somebody who doesn't have vested interest, somebody who only cares about the industry. And they need to get us to move local avocados up front. I don't want to keep going into these stores and it's all the imports. Put the local stuff up front, put the imports back in the corner. That's one thing we need to do. If we can get them to even buy local. You know, I mean, it took me 4 months to get the one store in Captain Cook to buy local lemons. Finally, I gave them a $5 5-gallon bucket full of local lemons, bumpy, rough skin, Jamboree lemons. Okay, just put them out. I'm not going to charge you. And he did. They were gone in 4 hours. Hey, can I buy another 5-gallon bucket from you? So that's, I mean, sometimes we have to take that extra step as farmers, as educators, in order to teach people. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but sometimes if you don't push its head in it, it doesn't even know it's water,
But-
which is a rough way of putting it. But
So I guess that makes me wonder, and maybe Nancy, this is something you could speak to too, is, so you've taken that 5-gallon bucket and it's worked. Are you seeing change across the islands where you feel there is a more openness, more awareness, and more willingness to market and sell local produce in a meaningful way? And connected with that, do you have any good statistics on what percentage of the produce that is consumed in Hawaii today is locally grown? Who wants to take that one?
You know, it's kind of hard because we haven't been gathering statistics since 2008, basically. We have the USDA statistics, but locally in the downturn, we lost that that capacity at HDOA. I think it's back now. I mean, Matthew Loke is back, and I hope that this will be starting to happen again. So, you know, I'm not sure. You know, once Matthew Loke did a study on fruit consumption in Hawaii, and the way it came out was that we grew around 35% of all the fruit that we ate in Hawaii, but we exported about 34%. So it's really hard to tell how much fruits and vegetables are local. In the stores in Kona, it's very, very few. Yeah.
But do you see that changing? Is it getting better?
It's more than it was in, yeah, sure, 10 years ago or 12, 15 years ago. It's more. What do you think, Ken?
yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, you know, we've had its up and downs. It's really like a roller coaster, and it depends. You know, with things like Whole Foods, it shot up. You know, the new Whole Foods wants to make it shot up again. And they need to hire some people who focus on that, and they need help from the Department of Ag. They need marketing tools. You know, the funding is so limited that a lot of it goes back to that. So that's 1%. I would disagree with that. I probably told Matt that, but there's it really depends on the crop itself. We don't import Djibouti kava. We import a few durian into Honolulu, into Chinatown, but most of it's all from Hilo side. You know, so I can go down the individual fruit and say what's there and what's not, what we could plant for more. Like why are we bringing in 22 million pounds of citrus that we can grow here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one that the DOA is helping. They gave me the funding to bring in 1,000 citrus trees that have been grown out in California, so I can bring them in February, and we're going to give them to 100 trees to each repository on each island, and then 1,000 trees, sorry, and they give 100 trees to everybody. You know, they distribute 100 trees to their different members on those islands. So that's, you know, they like that. That's put trees in the ground, and we've got to get trees in the ground.
Right. So I just want to, you know, we've been talking about 20 minutes, and just for the people who are watching, just to let them know that we'll probably go for about 45 minutes to an hour is what we're planning. And we are open to taking any and all questions. So if you do have any questions for Nancy or for Ken, you can send them in via our Facebook site, and they'll come to us. I think a question that I have drawn, because you both have a deep knowledge base to draw on, if there was one thing, and Nancy, let's start with you. If there was one thing that you could change at a systemic level that you believe would really do wonders for agriculture in Hawaii? What's the first thing that you think needs to change? If you had a magic wand, what would you change?
Mhm. I can think of two things that I would change. The first thing is I would like to see support for sustainability education. You can call it AINA-based education, school garden education, in every school in Hawaii that is supported by the Department of Education, because
Mandatory.
the consequences of educating every single keiki in Hawaii, giving them the knowledge and the skills that they need for the future to look at food, water, energy, recycling, and also understand where their food comes from and how to create health. All of those things in the long term, this is a long-term solution, but it will really change the entire culture of Hawaii to have every single child know that they can grow a home garden, they can make food, they understand what all the local foods are. Yeah, I think it, and experiment with like real life systems, which they are going to have to know how to do in the future. We're going to have some lot of challenges coming down the road. And I think our kicking need to have as much real life experiential learning as possible. So that would be one thing. And the other thing would be I would wave my magic wand, and all our decision makers, including at all the state agencies, our governor and the legislature, would see how necessary it is in today's world to put food and agriculture right at the top of their list for support. Because if that could happen, I think there could be a lot of really, really positive changes. There's so many positive changes happening with nonprofits and local organizations building agricultural programs. But we really need the government and the legislature to believe in this as much as the grassroots does.
Okay, that's great. Thanks so much, Nancy. Hi, Ken. What are your thoughts?
I mean, how can you argue with either one? I mean, I would have put the money for Department of Ag maybe at the top, and through that system I wrote about where you levy 5 cents a pound on inspection fee on all the imports. And using the 2008 statistics, that equaled $41 million, which is way more than the 1.4 they get from container fees and the 0.1 or 2 or 3% of the state budget. The $41 million would enable the Department of Aid to hire people, not just inspectors to prevent some of this stuff from coming in, but people that could go out and market in individual stores. You'd have money to buy. This is a kind of wagon used for local avocados only. It's for you. It's 280 bucks. We're giving it to you. You put local avocados in there now. And here's the signs, you know, with the Charwell and Kahalu and Malama, so that people know. So you educate, we have to educate the consumers. And with the stuff way in the back, people come in, grab something, they don't even look. So we have to have somebody that convinces these stores from Foodland, Safeway, all of them. They must start to think in terms of local, not putting a sign that says local first, always the best up, and then have oranges from Australia, which we have here in town. That's absurd. I want to see real local oranges in there, not from Australia.
You know, you mentioned just when you first started, and you were saying that you had written about, but for some of our viewers who may not have seen this writings, because this was not included in the piece that you just did for us in the essay on Japan, but what you were talking about, this 5 cents a pound inspection fee, can you just be a little more specific about what your thinking is there?
Well, I think that if we got the legislature here to issue a 5 cent a pound inspection fee, not tax, not sales tax. You can't tax interstate commerce, but everything that came in here on those things could get inspected, because a lot of stuff, they inspect about 1% now, is what I've been told.
And this is on all imported fruits and vegetables, is that?
Yeah, actually green coffee as well. for blending.
Okay. And that goes a little bit to something that you've both mentioned tangentially, which is the funding of the Department of Ag. And what is the current funding of the Department of Ag? What does that picture look like?
Well, I mean, they get from the legislature, correct me please, Nancy, was it 0.3 or something like that % of the state budget?
Yeah, it's about a half of 1% of the whole state budget. It's the lowest amount of any of the state agencies. But, you know, I don't think it's just about money. You know, I don't think giving them money is really the whole answer here, because our Department of Ag,
My
and,
1/2.
and I really, you know, I have high respect for those at the Department of Ag. They are doing really great work this year, especially helping the farmers every day. But you know, I think that there also has to be more to the Department of Agriculture instead of being just basically a regulatory agency. You know, there was a time in California and in other states too, where they changed the focus of their departments of agriculture away from being more about regulation and instead being more about food and agriculture. So the Department of Food and Agriculture. And so like in Oregon, you know, they created the Food Innovation Center, which Ken was just talking about in Japan. And I know that they've also built one on Maui, a Food Innovation Center. So we have to have some new innovative ideas that go along with increased funding for that agency. And I think that's possible because I'm sure there are people at Department of Ag that could think of all kinds of things that they could do if they had the funding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, yeah, no question about it. But we still need to get the advocates. Every state that I know of has marketing extension agents for the Department of Ag, not the university. University has them too. Sometimes they disagree. We don't have any. We've got Stewart, you know, who's a statistician. We need marketing extension agents. We need cost of production extension agents who are out, not in the office, but out in the field working with farmers, going to farmers market and say, hey, this is what happens if you sell, you know, 10 Meyer lemons for $1. This is what it costs you, you know, $1.87. How are you going to make money? So it's just educating people. I did that once. I told a woman and gave her the pamphlet I wrote, and she goes, "What are you, the fruit police?" And, you know, as a matter of fact, I think I am. And anyway, 2 years after that, at the market by Monago's here, she came up and apologized. And I'd thrown the pamphlet on her desk, and I guess she read it. And anyway, she realized where I was going with all of it. And so that was pretty rewarding. But it's just a matter of educating people about options. People don't want to just be told to do something, which has always been a problem with UH. You have options for doing things to help you do this, this, and this. And so that's the kind of education that I'm looking at. And I always look for funding, you know, how to teach people to fertilize correctly, irrigate correctly, prune correctly. These are basics once the trees are in the field, so that they don't get to be, you know, 80 feet tall.
Sure. So
that's my focus on education, which is just why it's so important that both of us keep working on what we're doing, because it's the whole community that we want to help.
Connected with that, we're starting to get some questions coming in, which is wonderful. Thanks to everyone who's sending in questions. And here is a question from Jane. We want to support local, but if we can't find them in grocery stores, where can we go to buy them? Farmers markets and roadside stands are not always convenient. So what does the consumer do?
Well, here in Kona, some of our farmers markets have reopened, but you know, it's still not at the level that it was for sure. But I think every community now has a CSA, a community supported agriculture. And I think if you Googled that with CSA and your island name, that it would pop up the names of the farms. A lot of the farms now have online ordering systems so that you can go into their system and you can choose what you want in your box. And then you get a box of fresh food from the farm every week. and you pick it up, or it's dropped off at a convenient point. So I think supporting our local CSA farms is a great idea right now.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Hawaii Farmers Union, because I think there are 13 chapters all across the island. So maybe Jane, that would be another source of information, is get in touch with your local chapter of the Hawaii Farmers Union and see
Well,
who
the,
CSA is.
the Farm Bureau has been doing it too. They have a new program called Farm to Car. And their website that you can order from is extensive, and it includes all kinds of value-added products that are created in Hawaii. So, you know, there's plenty of options here in this time.
Okay.
You can start a home garden.
Yeah, right. Plant yourself. So here is a question from Thomas for Ken. Ken, Thomas is asking, can you repeat the statistics that you gave earlier about local grown versus imported versus wasted?
All right, this is from an avocado study that a number of people worked on that was run by Sitar and Kathy Chan. And we found that we grew and sold 1 million pounds of avocados, and we imported 4 million pounds, 3.9 or something, 4 million pounds. And there were about 7 million pounds. And this was after interviewing a lot of growers here and Kauai and Oahu. So this is pretty much what we came up with. And it's all online someplace.
Okay.
All the
Any
numbers.
idea where?
Probably it's either hawaiifruit.net or htfg.org.
Okay.
You know, it's really interesting because in agriculture in general, about 50% of what is grown in the field is wasted. It's not brought to market because it just isn't, it's not perfect, or it's seconds or thirds or whatever. And so there is really a market for that also. And I know that the Department of Education School Food Services branch has been looking into that over at Kapiolani. And they are looking at like buying seconds of all of the tomatoes in the state that can't be put into the markets, and instead making tomato sauce for all of the school lunch programs across the state and flash freezing it. So there's a tremendous amount of waste that comes out of the field. And then I think recently I heard that, you know, food waste in the United States is somewhere around 45%.
Yeah.
So 45% of the food that does get to the market, it does get home, it does get cooked, then 45% of that is wasted and goes into the landfill. So, you know, hopefully at some point we will be able to figure out how to get a composting system where we can use green waste, put it through our tub grinder, add, you could even have pre-waste. You wouldn't have to use post-waste of food. And then you could make compost, and that compost could be used by the community to increase the soil carbon sponge.
Yeah, now you're thinking. It's it's an interesting question. Even I've never seen a statistic on waste specific to Hawaii of how much of the fruits and vegetables that are imported actually wind up being wasted. Because when you think of all of the carbon that has been burned to even get them to the islands in the first place, and then I mean the statistic, your statistic of 45% waste overall, I've seen 35%, but it's high. So it's got to be that there is a significant portion of all of the fruits and vegetables that are brought out that then, actually do go into the landfill or back to the land.
Where you really see it is in the school lunch program. As the children are bringing their trays to empty them out after lunch, they've been given way too much food on the tray because USDA has certain portion sizes of different things that has to be on the tray in order to have a reimbursable lunch or breakfast. And the small keiki just can't really eat that much. So and all of that ends up going into the trash. And this is a big expense for the Department of Education, because then they have to have a pickup every single day of, from their big trash bins. It has to be taken away every day from every school, 255, 60 schools. that is a really large amount of money for that contract. And what they decided to do at one school in Oahu, which was so innovative, was they did a composting project at the school. And this was Palolo Elementary, just right outside of Honolulu. And so one of the parents was had a tree trimming business. And so he was constantly chipping leaves and branches and whatever. And he would deliver to school large piles of chipped material, which had wood and leaf and material in it. And then every day the students would, whatever food was not being used, it would go into 5-gallon buckets, and those buckets would have a lid on it, be put in the corner. And then a UH grad student after school would come over, take all those buckets, take them down to a certain area, and layer the pile with the food waste from the cafeteria, and then a layer of the green waste, and then food waste, green waste, until they had piles that were about 4 by 4 by 4 with a piece of netting over the top to keep those chickens out. And then they would start another pile. And so they composted every single thing that came out of their cafeteria, and it was all weighed every day. So they were able by month to make a report to the Department of Education saying, on this day, we had this much waste, and this was your menu that day. So if they wanted to adjust the menu, they could adjust the menu by how much waste they were seeing. It was a brilliant program, but it was a little costly, and I think this was an Ulupono Initiative grant. And so after the grant was up, then the program ended. But they did prove that it was an amazing project.
Well, and it does go to your point about ingenuity. So we've had a couple more questions come in. Here's a question from Thomas. Ken's article mentions greenhouses in Japan. Would like to know Ken's and Nancy's opinions of using various scales of vertical agriculture, from commercial for profit to community-based nonprofit to neighborhood and household local self-reliance and subsistence, and in the future, locally produced lab-grown protein to dramatically increase Hawaii's local food self-reliance in combo with more local regenerative, organic, horizontal permaculture. So that's a long question, but I think in essence, really what he is wanting to know what you think about these sort of ideas about vertical agriculture. Where should it be used? How should it be used? What makes sense?
In 2000, they had World's Fair in Nagoya, and they were really pushing vertical so they had, 4-story buildings that they made for the festival, for the World's Fair, and the sides were all green and growing stuff. And then they had other 2-story buildings. Everything was green and growing something that they used at the restaurant at the World's Fair. So I don't think there's a question that can be done. But, like Bob Dylan said, money doesn't talk, it swears. So we have to find a way to fund these things. I'm sorry, but if what would you do if somebody gave me $1 million? I would just buy a ton of trees and give them to people to plant. That's what I would do. Nancy would probably set up a whole different thing with the in-school classrooms. I mean, everybody has a different area that we need to focus on, and we need to focus on those areas in order to be effective. A little bit here and there, and pretty soon the rest of my hair falls out. So I think this is a great idea. I think you should get on Sharon Hurd's mailing list from the Department of Ag, where you find all the opportunities for funding, and learn how to write grants and put it in. And whatever island you're on, make a vertical growing house. I think it's a great idea, but it's how to get money to do it is always the question. Selling the fruit, when we have lots and lots of fruit, there's no problem to sell it. Never a problem to sell it and give it away. And even the gleaners are calling me all the time for free fruit. Nope, we got it all sold already. So, or we're making value-added products, which is an extremely important additional enterprise to being a successful farmers. Learn that, take the Hawaii Master Food Preservers class and then learn how to safely make these things.
Okay.
So there's
You know-
no, there's why they waste as much as they do. It's, I mean, my wife, when she taught at Kona, every day she'd look at the garbage on the way out of the kitchen filled with apples. None of those kids ate apples. She'd bring a burlap bag full of rambutan. They gobbled them up.
Mm.
She just giving them to the kids. They loved it. Eating an apple, ugh, you know, break your teeth on that stuff that gets flown in. So that's there. I mean, they're aware of the difference between local and imported, even if they do see it in the store. And so because grandpa does it, or Uncle Ken does it, or somebody does it, you know. And so I think, you know, I love working with the young kids like that.
One
And
of
we
the
donate trees. So
Yeah, one of the things that I loved in your article, Ken, at the very end, when you talked about the program where they take the fig trees and they put them in the carts and they give a
yeah,
fig tree to any elder who wants one. And I thought that's a beautiful idea for all the kupuna in Hawaii, but also it would be such a wonderful thing to give every kid their own tree. To
absolutely.
be able to, you know, so that brings both of your ideas together. For you, it's getting trees everywhere, and Nancy, it's getting the kids
I
involved.
mean, between Jerry and I, Nancy's husband and I, we could probably supply pretty close to 1,000 fig cuttings to give away. Who's going to do it?
All right, we have another question here. This is a question from Karen. She says, we would be interested in participating in a pruning workshop for fruit trees. Could you let us know if this will be happening?
Yeah, I mean, we were supposed to, I don't know where you're at, but we're supposed to do one on Kauai this year, but it's not going to happen because of COVID. So as soon as we start to get back in, because also you can only have 10 people, and we usually have about 50 that comes to this thing. And the counties don't want to pay, they'll pay one airfare for me to come over and teach it, but they're not paying 5 airfares in order to do 10 people each time.
Yeah.
So,
But connected with that, since we're in COVID and so much has moved online, including us in this conversation, are there resources for someone like Karen online to kind of learn herself about pruning, maybe YouTube video?
yeah, well, we haven't, because I don't have anybody to film the videos, but if, I mean, ask on htfg.org. And depending on what island you're on, I will put you in touch with the president on that island. If it's on Maui, it's Jordan. On Kauai, we've got a couple guys who are kind of sharing responsibility. And Molokai and Lanai, we have people. And of course, here in Kona and Hilo. And who did I forget? Maui was Jordan and Paul and James and way out there.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll be glad to, uh, you know, I'll be glad to help with that. And I do have some notes here somewhere about doing a couple online workshops like that. People say, how can I lower my branches? So I've got to do a film of how you make 3 cuts. You hold it down and you tape it up, and then you rope the top so that instead of the branch going like this, now it's growing like this. Pretty soon you get verticals here, and then that brings it down even farther. So showing it on the video is on the to-do list for sure.
Okay. You know, we have actually, this isn't a question, it's more of a comment, but from William from Nancy, when you were talking about the DOE, Nancy has a great point about the DOE, which has done away with support for gardening via student farm groups, as well as home economics to teach how to cook and store food. In addition, mechanical studies has also gone by the wayside. No more shop classes on how to maintain equipment necessary to farming.
A really good point, but it's a lot of that was UH, all of the stuff that they even have the pots and pans and things that UH and Kainaliu, where they used to have 8 extension agents teaching this, and now they have one person worried about the coffee rust and another one about flowers. So again, it gets back to funding UH. So when I find out and they call me about something, I'll try to help, but you know, I can't fix everything for everybody. But yeah, we've got to have that. So when I brought the Master Food Preservers, which teaches home ec essentially, or home economics, UH had no interest in it. They said, well, if you write us a big grant, maybe we'll do it. Well, if I was going to write a big grant, I was going to do it for the master food preservers, not give 30% of it to UH. So that's another issue for those of us who are out here battling these things every day, if you will. There's, we come up against that kind of stuff, and I want to help, and all we can do is send people to places that might be able to help, or tell them what they'd have to do. All right, I can teach you all this, but we're not doing it now until the first class is filled up. We'll do it in March. It'll cost you $300, and it's 8 full days, and blah, blah, blah. So that's if they want to take it to that step, that's great.
Okay.
I have a comment about that. Is that okay?
Please, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, so this is to in William's comment, is that the COVID, the situation with our keiki and the COVID has created a lot of stress in the children. And eventually the children are going to be able to come back to school. And when they do come back to school, they need to have a really healing curriculum and environment, because they are going to need it. And one of the things that will be healing for them is to be outside in nature and develop something. I mean, they could even develop their own school garden, or if they had a school garden, they could work in it and grow plants and make food and just have that really healing and nurturing environment. So I think we need these things really more now than ever before. And also, at our high school level, agriculture is not agriculture is simply an elective. It's part of the CTE program, which is the Career and Technical Ed program, which I think William is talking about. And in the CTE program, all of those classes that would be shop, wood shop, metal shop, health, agriculture, there's one more, I'm forgetting. The students can only take them as an elective. And so if you're going to college and you have certain courses that you have to take for your college prep, you can only take a certain amount of electives every semester for your whole high school career. So you can't really study agriculture. You might be able to take one class per year in the natural resource pathway. So I think one thing that we developed, we identified in our P20 work that we did statewide with the Farm to School Hui partners, is that if the agricultural sciences could be made into a science credit, in a 3-unit science credit, like biology or chemistry or whatever, because the agricultural sciences actually are sciences. Mm-hmm. So if the students could choose that as one of their science pathways instead of the other things, I think it would interest a lot of students at the high school level to move more into agriculture and food. And so I'm not sure exactly how to go about changing that at the Department of Education, but I think it's something that needs to be changed.
Okay, well, you're not the only one, because here's a comment from Brian who says, snaps to that, Nancy. Yes. So sorry, Ken.
Oh, no, I couldn't agree more. I think following the master gardeners now in terms of what they do, if they had an abbreviated class like that, that's 12 weeks. If you had an abbreviated classes, you've got everything covered in 12 weeks, but you can abbreviate it and cut it down, and they do it, for 3 to 6 weeks or something, where it's more intensive and they're really focused on that. So, I mean, it's just something else to consider doing through UH, since they lost every other program to help the community.
UH is going to have to deal with the fact that they have a lot of extension stations that may not be very used right now. So they may have to cut back on that at some point and really concentrate their efforts on a few stations. I know I've heard Ken talk before about if we could turn the Kainaliu station into a fruit park, it would be so amazing, because there are there are, or it could have a small grove of macadamia nuts, or a small grove of coffee, or a small grove of whatever we grow here. Can you kind of talk about, Ken, like what does a fruit park look like?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's for visitors, it's for educators, it's for um, private partnerships where they sell what they made from fruits at their farm or what they buy from the park, you know, the seconds that they get from the park. Um, it would work fine there. We looked at it too as not just a fruit park, but as a ag tourism destination, and to be able to have, you know, all of it in one position, because it's not that big. But there's a few things that have to do with it, and then it comes down to the swear word again. Um, but they just never seem to take an interest. Who's going to do it? You? Sure, I'll work on it. You know,
All of these things would take an investment.
yeah.
And
But
so
not just money, but time.
yeah, at some point, and you know, Albie Miles has been talking about that in his EKI Transforming Wise Food System Together infographic that I've been looking at over the last 3 or 4 days. And you know, one of the things that is going to have to happen at the state level is there's going to have to be some kind of a gathering of policymakers and making a strategic plan around what is the most important. I know I see there was this question here from Thomas. He asked a lot of the questions.
Yeah, I was gonna go back to that. Do you want me to, maybe I'll read that for the people, and then, because, so here we go. This is a long question from Thomas, but which is most important? More support for existing state ag parks, or more cheap or free state land for farmers plus long-term leases, or more upfront subsidy of adequate infrastructure, primarily water, or creating more community kitchens and or food hubs, or requiring taxpayer-funded institutions like schools, prisons, state hospitals, the military, and maybe even large private entities like hotels to buy local first, or eliminating GET on local agricultural products for local markets to level the playing field with GET exempt ag exporters in Hawaii. So that's something like 6 or 7 different ways of stimulating agriculture in the islands. So thoughts?
I think a big one there from what I've seen with Farm to School is institutional purchasing. And I know they've been working on this at the State Procurement Office. They've been working on this at Department of Education School Food Services branch for many years. And that is developing contracts with farmers so that they can actually give a farmer a contract for a certain amount of food to be grown at a certain amount of pounds or whatever for a certain time. This is done all across the country. The USDA promotes this everywhere. We still don't have those kind of contracts in Hawaii. So if our farmers could have contracts and they knew that if they grew this food, that this would be paid for, I think it would make a huge difference, because we need to start getting away from bringing in frozen foods that are processed from the mainland and heating them up and giving them to the kids. You know, and everyone agrees, you know, we really want to do more scratch cooking with locally produced products, but we don't have enough farms to do that. And one of the reasons we don't have enough farms is there's not a good system for payment yet. So that contracting system is essential.
Yeah, it's a good point. It is pretty common in Japan to do that, custom growing. And you know, people, the company person will come out and they'll look at the growing of the lotus fruit, and I'll just take it all, and here's 15,000, and you get the other 15,000 when you deliver the lotus fruit. Let me go see your potatoes. Oh, these look great. You got that whole field. They're coming up nice. Here's 40,000. You know, you get the other 40,000, and they just do it. And I've been with these guys from these companies just giving out these monster checks like that. What we would consider that. But the owners know how good they are at developing the crop the way they want the crop. So we have a lot of education to do in terms of teaching farmers what to do in terms of producing avocados and harvesting avocados and producing citrus and knowing when to harvest citrus. And that's where, you know, I feel that UH is let us down. They just don't have a lot of people anymore to do that, you know, especially on here. So, you know, it all falls on us as experienced growers.
I'd like to make a comment about that because I had a long conversation last night with Janelle Yamamoto, who's she's the statewide GoFarm director. GoFarm is our statewide farmer training program. It's connected with UH, but it kind of stands on its own. It's driven by grants. And there is a farmer training program on 5 islands. Well, no, not Molokai, but there is on 4 islands. Oahu has 2 programs. And Janelle was telling me that a few weeks ago, they had a couple of ag curious evenings where they invited the community and were saying, you know, if you'd like to join one of our cohorts and learn how to be a farmer in Hawaii, come to this. And there were over 100 people that came to the 2 meetings. One was at Leeward Community College, the other was on the North Shore. And out of that, about half of those people turned in an application within a few days. And those cohorts can only take 12 per cohort. But it is really amazing to know that that many people in Hawaii are thinking of becoming farmers. They're either new farmers or they're young farmers, beginning farmers. So they don't have to be young. I mean, she said the average age is around 40, which is interesting. And that mostly it's more mature people that want to enter these programs. So at any one time in the state, we have 60 young and beginning farmers in our farm programs. And so this question about support for state ag parks, cheaper free state land, long-term leases, I spoke to her about that last night, and she was saying that if you're one of these 60 people and you have family land that when you finish the course you can go to and you can start up your farm, that's one thing. But most of them do not have family land that they can go to, and that one of the problems with our state ag parks, especially the ones that are on Oahu, is that they only want to lease out really large pieces of property, like 35 acres or 50 acres to a new or beginning farmer. A new or beginning farmer would be happy with a half an acre.
Yep.
Right? And so they can't get the kind of leases that they want because the leases are too large. So I think, you know, there's a potential here. And I know a lot of people must have been already talking about this. This is not a new idea. Is that, in fact, I've heard you talk about it, Julia, is that these like incubator small programs would be started on each island for those new and beginning farmers to move into after they finish their educational part, where they could have like a quarter acre, a half an acre, or an acre to experiment with and see how they do for a year or so, get their business plans going and get, maybe there would be a shared infrastructure of a washroom and, you know, anyway, I think there is a huge need for that. And I see we only have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to stop talking.
We don't have to, you know, we can shoot for an hour, but I don't think we have to feel like, you know,
okay,
the blade is coming down right when we get to 60 minutes. But I want to just share a couple more comments and questions, and then maybe we'll close out. And then here's a comment from William. Fruit parks are an excellent idea. The Haas Charter School in Pahoa is looking at something like this, but the vision is still developing. We may invite Mr. Love to inform us on this. So there you are, Ken, you're in demand again.
As I get well, and it'll be my 42nd time to Hilo in 40 some years. So.
We also had a question, again, maybe keep the answer on the short side if you can, just because we don't have that much more time. But this is from Thomas again. Are fruit parks the same or similar to urban food forests?
They're different. Urban food forests is where a group of people get together and they can go get stuff to eat or to propagate. the fruit park idea includes value-added production, pruning, irrigation, all of the lessons that you need to learn by coming to this one central location and having people teach nonstop every day. I teach pruning at the fruit park. You know, I teach irrigation at the fruit park, or I'm in the library if nobody's here, you know, sorting books or something. So it's just doing all of these different enterprises that, you know, it could be going out on the road to talk to senior centers, or taking, you know, plants to the seniors, or keikis at the grade school. So those people are usually retired extension agents, uh,
Mhm.
you know, but they don't have to be. They can be anyone who wants to do that job and wants to contribute to an idea to better agriculture in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And a lot of people come here, and, you know, anywhere I can get some land, just a couple of acres, I it's tough. You know, you don't have a down payment, you don't have your own car. I mean, how are you gonna do this?
Yeah.
So I keep working on giving people to they call me, and they, you know, through the woofers program. And in
Mhm.
some cases they will wind up staying with those people as a permanent addition, rather than just a woofer and have to go to another, move to another farm. So
And you know, there may not be too many viewers who aren't aware of what a woofer is, but just in case there are some viewers who aren't aware, that's the Worldwide Organic Farming program started in England decades ago, and young people, sometimes not so young, but usually typically young people, uh, volunteer and work on farms to gain experience in exchange for shelter and sometimes some food. Okay, we have one more question that have come in from viewers. This is from Brian. And Brian, I think we did touch on this, but just so that you feel included, where can we get a list of the CSA farms? And I think we talked about the Farm Bureau would be one source for that, possibly the Farmers Union, and Googling just CSA farms and the island that you're on, and any other suggestions, or do you think that covers it?
well, Edible Hawaiian sometimes has lists. So
Okay,
and
Edible Hawaiian. And they're probably online. Are they online?
yeah, each issue is, but I don't know what they have for that type of listing. So they
Okay.
could send a
Oh,
letter
Ken is
to.
talking about the Edible Hawaiian Island magazine.
Yeah.
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 They
So,
have all of the farmers markets listed, and so having the CSA listed in addition to that would be a great idea to push that on.
yeah. All right. Well, we've been on for 63 great minutes. How are you feeling, Ken?
I'm hanging in there.
Well, you really been very valiant in staying with us and offering so many thoughts. I want to maybe close with giving you each a couple of minutes if there are any closing thoughts that you have that you want to share. You want to start, Nancy?
Yeah, you know, I just really like to give a shout out to all of the nonprofits, community organizations, state agencies, and funders who have been funding these kinds of initiatives since around 2007, because it is really our private funders that have been, you know, and this includes like the Olupono Initiative, Haole Maloa, the Bill Healy Foundation, Kamehameha Schools, and so many more. They have been really driving the work that has become the foundation for building a new agriculture, a food and agriculture for Hawaii. And, you know, it's really, it's amazing that they are still hanging in there and helping us. And I'm very thankful for that. And also all of the community organizations that have been working on this over the years, you know, this new program at UH West Oahu with Dr. Albie Miles, the Sustainable Community Food Systems, Ma'o Farms, the Hawaii Farm to School Hui, the DOE's Aina Pono program, the GoFarm initiative for our young farmer training, the CTAR Soft program, and Seed Lab, all the work that Ken Melrose did, mapping all of the agricultural systems in Hawaii, the Kohala Center, and on and on. I'm sorry if I didn't name your organization, and I know because the Hawaii Farm to School Hui has 25 partners. So all of those partners too, they have all of been laying this foundation that really was not here in 2007 when I went to the Sheraton Keauhou to set up the Hawaii Island Food Summit. And I went in to talk to the food and beverage guys. And I said, I'd really like to have locally served food for breakfast and snack and lunch. And they looked at me and said, that's just not possible. You're gonna have to find another venue. This isn't gonna work. And so I came home and the first thing I did was I called Ken Love. Do you remember that, Ken?
Oh, very well.
I called Ken Love and I said, they're not going to let us do the food summit at the Sheraton because they won't serve local food. Can you help me? Can you help me source all of the produce and the fruits that we're going to need for 300 plus people for breakfast and lunch? And he said, absolutely. And it was an amazing turnaround for the people at the Sheraton, because when he pulled up with his truck that was overloaded with boxes of fruit and put them on the loading dock, and they had all of the kitchen help come out, no one even knew what these boxes were of food. And all of that food was served to the people who came to that amazing conference. And so, which was actually, that was a conference that was put on by Pam and Pierre Omidyar.
Yeah.
So, you know, because that came out of the Hawaii Island Whole Systems Agriculture Report that the Rocky Mountain Institute did in 2005 and 6 here on Hawaii Island. That was the culminating conference for that work. And when I look back on that, that seems to be the beginning of developing a local food system for Hawaii. Yeah. And so it's been now 13 years.
We kept waiting for the second year and it.
Yeah. Oh, no.
So,
all right, Ken, do you have closing thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree completely with that. One of the things that we've done through the fruit growers is that we've taught the chefs. I was also president of American Culinary Federation Konokohala Chefs Group. And so as a chef, I wanted to teach these other guys that this is Chipotle Kava. You don't just put it on the in-room amenity basket. You make something in the kitchen with that, with balimbi, with all of these bizarre fruits that we grow. And they never even heard of it. And so once they started to use it in sauces and reductions and syrups and things, that changed everything. All of a sudden, Adaptations has got to send all this weird stuff, you know, down to them because we take everything to them. And it's worked great. And that was probably around the same time we really started focusing and trying to teach chefs that there was a big difference in the food. And one guy, I brought down a giant stack of bananas, the whole thing, and I walked in the back door at KO Beach, and Travis said, yeah, why do you got them like that? Just cut them up and put them in a box for you. No, I'm going to show you something, Bill. So I walked outside. He followed me. I put him in the middle of the buffet line about 10 minutes before it opened. I just sit back and watch. People couldn't get their food. They just wanted their picture taken with the big bunch of bananas in the middle, and they could pick off them, you know, off the stem. So we changed the whole way of the whole perception for at least Professor Chef Trask and a lot of them that followed him. So now the Four Seasons, you see teepees, and as people walk to their room, there's different kinds of bananas just rocking in the breeze there. So it's getting that out there and educating chefs that created a market, and arguably they're our most important market as a farmer.
So as a final question that I want to ask you both, to take it back to farming, back to the land, and we talked about at the beginning of this program what you saw outside, what was outside growing. So I'd love to ask you both, what's the next thing that you're going to harvest? When you go outside, what's waiting out there to be harvested?
Ulu.
Oh, great.
Oh my gosh, this is ulu season in Kona, and they're just falling off the tree faster than I can get them in and steam them and freeze them.
Oh.
How about you, Ken?
Margie sold all the ulu. So we've got all the Ore coming off the tree now, which is that Davidsonian plum, and it's just makes Friday. I want to make jelly with it. I think we've got tons of it. So it's a big purple thing, kind of like that, and very
Where,
sour.
where's it from?
It's a bush tucker fruit from Australia.
From Australia.
And if you search bush tucker Hawaii, you come up with the new publication that I wrote on it for UH. So, or finger limes. We've got to harvest finger limes for this weekend. So there's always something. We have 300 species, so there's always something to harvest. There's tangelos and oranges and lemons and New Zealand seedless lemons. I can't keep track of it all.
I've still got a whole tree out there full of persimmons. I mean, there shouldn't be this many right now, but I need to make jam or something.
Save the seeds and check your pH because
All right.
you need
Well,
a high
you
pH.
can go visit each other and share produce. So I want to thank you both so much. I hope that in the future, maybe we'll see you back on this program and we'll talk about, clearly there are many issues to discuss around agriculture. And then for viewers who might want to join us again next week, I just want to let people know that next week we're going to have a discussion on healthcare, and it'll be featuring Dr. Seiji Yamada and Dr. Stephen Kemble, both of whom wrote essays also on looking at the situation with healthcare, both from the standpoint of what's happening with doctors on the ground in Hawaii, also looking at just the health insurance systems. So we hope you'll join us for that. We thank you so much for being a supporter of Civil Beat. And I, most of all, I want to send best wishes for Ken's immediate recovery, and big mahalo to Nancy and to Ken. Aloha, everyone.
Aloha, aloha, Ken.
Thanks, guys.